And I also, as Bob mentioned in his fine introduction that he made for my talk, I've in my writings, I've spent a good deal of time analyzing and criticizing militarized nation state system, which is interfaced with global capitalism. Right? There are many thinkers, most of them in the world systems theoretical tradition, who see these two institutions as not as separate, but as intimately related: sovereign nation states and global capitalism. And in this new chart here, what I have done is taken a well-known chart made by Ken Wilber, in which you can see uh, the it has he has divided human life into four quadrants. The upper left is the self and consciousness. The upper right is the science and scientific development. The lower left, culture and worldview, and the lower right, economic and governmental systems. And the axis in each of these, which is on the uh, diagonal, uh, he identifies a growth process, right? So you can see in the upper left the magical self, like each of us probably had when we were young children, to an egocentric self, to a mythic self, to an achiever self, which is quite common under contemporary modern life, to a progressively maturing human self, pointing going forward toward a holistic and integral level. And the same kind of development we can see in the lower left, the culture and worldview, right? That we need, and to address our fundamental problems, Wilbur and others say, we need to pay attention. We need conscious evolution. We need to be thinking on how we can move ourselves, our subjectivity, our culture, our institutions, our economic and governmental institutions. How can we move these toward more mature forms, past the terrible threats that we now face? We're on the lower right, we're now at the level of sovereign territorial states. And you can see I've added as a higher level in the blue box there, the Earth Federation under the Earth Constitution. We're not, obviously not there yet. We're at the level of sovereign territorial states. So I argue, and this chart actually appears in my most recent book, my 2018 book called Global Democracy and Human Self-Transcendence. And in that book, I argue that our present institutions, global institutions, the dominant ones, militarized nations and global capitalism, that these don't just reside in the economic and governmental systems quadrant. They don't just make a mess of the world politically and economically. What they do is impact the whole of human life. They impact the other three quadrants as well. And that's why I have here the arrows, right? The obviously militarized nations and global capitalism, what do? They colonize most scientific research in the world for war research, nuclear weapons, right? As some people have speculated, this COVID pandemic that we're now experiencing may be a result of this kind of war, biochemical war research that has escaped from some lab, whether in Fort Detrick, Maryland, or in Wuhan, China, wherever. But what a shame this is. You know, science, which could be used to contribute to human well-being, is colonized by this system, this capitalist and militarized nation system. It's colonized and misdirected toward this horrible war research. And the same thing in the level of culture and worldview. It breeds cultures of fear and insecurity, And very similar, because we live in cultures of fear and insecurity, our subjectivity is often characterized by hate and fear and a similar insecurity, right? People don't trust one another. They don't love one another. They're suspicious of differences. They find, Russia and China and the US and Iran and North Korea, there's this terrible, all this suspicion and tension. It needs to, all of this could change if we manage to transcend this system at the bottom here, militarized nations and global capitalism.